terms of the headline issues that were, all over the newspapers and just before the summit, the currency issues, the question of divergence over U.S. monetary policy, the question of the exchange rate, the Chinese exchange rate notably. I think it's fair to say that those issues were really hard to tackle before the summit, and they remain basically unsolved after the summit. The working group is going to try to hopefully find some new language and concepts around which the leaders, and measurements perhaps, around which the leaders next time around can come to the table and take a fresh look at those issues. And that's worrisome on the one hand because obviously those issues were on everyone's mind, and high expectations were and remain placed on the G20. At the same time, it's not accurate to say that there weren't other issues on which the leaders made progress. Notably, I would say limited but still significant progress on financial regulatory reform, on trade. Baby steps, I think, but they're being taken and moving forward. And also the fact that the Korean hosts wanted to put development on the agenda and managed to have, I would say, even a fresh and more importantly a common approach that obviously everyone could buy into going forward. I think it's going to be a significant plank for the G20, and it complements the other items on the G20 agenda that I mentioned, currency, trade, financial regulation. So in that sense, there's been a movement forward. The juncture at which the G20 leaders find themselves at the moment is that whereas 2 years ago they all wanted to pull in the same direction, which is to say everyone wanted to provide stimulus for their economies, and they more or less even agreed on how to do it, or at least everyone was pulling in the same direction. Right now there's that perception. Of course, some countries are doing much better than others. That's one thing in terms of emerging from the recession, and that will tend to have to create a kind of a zero-sum game atmosphere where the countries that aren't doing so well would like the ones that are doing well to basically pull more of the weight than they've been pulling so far. I think it's fair to say that was a tension that really was underlying some of the difficulties dealing with the currency issues, the trade and current account imbalance issues that were so prominent just before and at the summit. But another question arises, which is that it's a lot easier for governments everywhere to stimulate the economy than to if you like, foster long-term growth. Number one, then to return to some kind of fiscal balance, without which some long-term growth is not possible, to foster long-term growth through structural measures of the type we know are necessary, whether it's in the United States addressing the long-term structural fiscal deficit, addressing the question of raising the purchasing power of the middle class in China, which is a question of very lively debate in China, and would actually help solve the imbalances. It's a lot more difficult for countries to act on those kind of structural issues than simply say, okay, we're all in trouble together, we need to increase our stimulus spending. That works for a while, but it doesn't address the structural issues that really deep down are at the heart of some of the imbalances we're talking about. I think the French hosts are going to have a major challenge. The issues that were on the table in Seoul, notably the completion of the financial regulatory reform agenda, and the question of imbalances and frankly volatility is an angle that the French presidency is going to look like. Volatility in currency markets, volatility in commodity markets, that has its roots in let's say, differentiated monetary and exchange rate policies of the different countries. Obviously, those will still be, I would say, on the agenda, and they will possibly be just as hard to tackle then as they were in Seoul. The hope is that there will be more ammunition, if you like, to tackle those issues, more research, better advice, that countries will have had a chance to take a step back and rethink the kind of discussion that they've been having. I'll give you an example. If you talk about exports, imports, imbalances, exchange rates, you tend to get into a zero-sum game discourse. You know, you need to do more. Not me, but you need to do more in order to resolve these imbalances. I think if countries found more of a common vocabulary around a growth agenda that they all agree on, and that could recast some of those very same issues, but in terms of common ways that we would find to make trade grow together, make sure that some economies that have the potential and the wherewithal to continue growing, that we remove impediments, or that they remove impediments to that growth so that everyone can benefit. Continue on the trade and development agenda that I think was reasonably well tackled in Seoul, and which is very important for the future growth, again, of the world economy.